right, hello and welcome everybody to the live stream. I know that for the last, I don't even know how long, it's been a while since I've done just live streaming in a while. And I've brought on guests and I've had mukbangs and we've done protests and it's been very, very busy. But I would like for there to be some just some chill, relaxed time because there does seem to be just, you know, too much going on right now. I had a job interview today. I had just a lot of things that are stressing me out. I feel like the anxiety has finally set in. I'm finally feeling a little lonely. Usually it takes me time for things to hit me, and I think it's finally kind of set in the gravity of the situation and that this might not be over for a very, very long time. So I just want to do something a little bit relaxed today and then maybe watch some Marvel movies that I haven't watched yet. Although I will be watching Endgame again because I think I need a good dose of Fat Thor. But welcome, Junk Shop Library, and whoever else might be joining us today. For those of you who have never joined in these kinds of sessions, I am just doing a live dramatic reading. Years and years and years ago, way back when, I used to do a lot of writing. I was a creative writer, and to some extent, I'm also a published author. And I have been looking back at some of my written work, and the written work that I'm particularly looking at is Fork Road. And I should have done this from the beginning, but I have the link to this specific novel here, and you could check it out if you want to and follow along while I read. We are currently on chapter 15, and we will most likely be ending where the story ends today. So if you would like to take part in that, please do feel free to. We are going to be ending these readings because there is no end to the story, and you will be welcome to provide an ending if you want to. If you want to suggest how the story should end, and maybe I'll actually finish it and then we can have like a final episode. But before I dive into that, welcome Junk Shop Library, welcome Sophia Milstein, welcome Dave Lindsay, welcome Paul. Junk Shop Library has asked, did your interview seem to go well? It did. It was a really, really good interview. So this workplace, one of my co-workers, which I had worked with previously, he had suggested this organization and he had recommended me, so the interview went quite smoothly, and I have reached out to him to say thank you for offering to speak to them so highly of me. So I'm actually quite hopeful that this will go through and I'll get some opportunities for this kind of work in future, though probably, if we're looking realistically, I probably won't get any kind of work until September, because I generally work in schools and the academic year has been severely messed with because of the virus. And they probably won't be reopening or restarting until September, which is our normal academic year. But thank you all for joining us, and I hope that you will have a good time. We are just going to have like a relaxed session today, nothing too crazy, nothing too bombastic. I need it. I think we all need it to an extent. So grab a coffee, grab some water, grab a blanket, a stuffed animal, whatever you want, and we will get into this reading. Couple of things. Thank you in the last couple of days for participating in these different actions that we've been taking. So yesterday's live stream, in the mukbang that we held on Saturday, and just generally just dealing with my content, taking it in without too much complaint, although there have been a few that I will hopefully deal with in future. But thank you. I will move on to reading the story. We are in chapter 15, so if you would prefer not to have the whole story spoiled and you would prefer to go back and listen to the old ones, please feel free to do that. This is probably going to be the last iteration of this story before we move on to something else. And yeah, I will be taking a few breaks in between just so we're not overloaded with story, and so you can ask any questions or give any feedback that you would like to give. And yeah, we'll take it from there. I am currently streaming with OBS, so if we have any troubles or any problems, if you can't hear me, if the video freezes, but do let me know about that. So yeah, we are trying something different, something new. I don't know how it's gonna run, and if it doesn't run smoothly, I will never do this again because this is already too complex for me. But you know, feel free to you know, just rail on me for whatever. Anyway, we're gonna move on to reading this. We're on chapter 15, and we are probably going to end because there's only 2 chapters following this. So we'll probably end today, unless something happens. So, chapter 15, Fork Road. Escapism was a wondrous thing. A thing that is such a huge and artful lie in one's own mind that you feel free for those precious moments of it, until you return to the obviously harsh reality you wanted to escape. Or it's brought on you in the middle of your bizarre lie without you willing it to. "What are you doing here?" said a woman that Amanda barely recognized. She couldn't believe how differently the woman looked, how softened she seemed now. Amanda didn't respond. She just stared and took in the entirely different person who was speaking with such a familiar voice. The woman glared back, not at all pleased by Amanda's interrupting and coming along unannounced and uninvited. "How did you find me?" she asked. Amanda could see a small child peeking at her from behind the safety of his mother's legs, and she smiled at him. It gave her a little warmth to see him smile back. "You look different," Amanda said. "Thought this was another one of your dens, Miller." Miller furrowed her brows, and Amanda saw her curl her hands into tight fists. Amanda found it all very amusing, but she attempted not to smirk. The little boy by Miller's legs turned his head up to try and look at his mother's face. "Mum," he said, elongating the word in that endearing, childlike way. "Mum, come back inside." Amanda raised a brow at Miller, wondering what her reaction would be. "Well," Amanda said, "you going to let me in?" Miller glowered daggers at Amanda. "Sure," Miller responded in a tight voice. "Come on in." The boy by Miller's feet scrambled away, excited and shy about the new person. He hid himself behind a doorway as Amanda walked into Miller's home, and he cocked his head out a little bit, just enough to see her. Miller sighed. "Elliot," she said, "go and finish your aeroplane." Elliot's face fell. He paused, his little mouth pouting as he thought. "Can I show the lady my plane when I'm finished?" he asked, with all the innocence that nature had given him. Miller nodded. "You'd better get to work on it, or else it'll be bedtime soon." A look of momentary alarm crossed Elliot's face, and he flailed out of sight to return to his task. Miller turned to Amanda. Amanda could see how desperate Miller was to knock her teeth out. She had strolled in and invaded her safe space, her child's safe space. Amanda could understand that, but it made the entire situation no less amusing. "What are you doing here?" Miller snapped in a low voice. "How did you find me?" Amanda put her hands in her pockets, leaning against the closed front door. "How old is he?" she asked. "Leave Elliot out of this," Miller warned her. "Leave him the fuck out of this. You never saw him. You don't know anything about him." All right, Amanda said, trying her best not to laugh. "Calm down. No one will know." Miller huffed, unsatisfied. "He's 3 years old," she murmured, wandering off into her living room. Amanda took off her shoes by the door and followed Miller. It was like a breath of fresh air, as surreal as a good dream. There were paintings hanging on the wall, a bright light in each room with lampshades to cover them. There was wooden, homely furniture and a standard television that played a children's show, with a little video game console sitting at the base of it. Amanda took a seat. She felt as though it was expected of her, and heard a kettle that Miller had put on beginning to scream as it boiled the water within. She could hear Elliot fussing and fiddling with his toys, trying to engineer his aeroplane. Amanda smiled. She hadn't smiled to herself like that in a while. It felt strange and outlandish, but warm. It wasn't long before Miller strode into the living room with a tray of tea and biscuits. She set it down on the wooden coffee table sitting in the middle of the living room and took a seat for herself, taking up a mug of steaming tea and sipping at it slowly. Amanda didn't pick up the mug that Miller had made for her. She watched the smoke rise from it with that awful blank stare of hers. Amanda sighed. I knew, she said, I knew there was something odd about you the moment you stepped in my way. Miller swallowed and snorted. You're a weirdo. We're not that different, Amanda murmured. I know that buried, force-forgotten part of yourself knows that. Miller chuckled. Go on, Mandy, she said with a sly sneer on her pale pink lips. Enlighten me. Tell me what you think you know. Amanda paused, the cold creeping over her skin like 1,000 tiny insects. I know you see as I see, she said. I know you're the one that got away. You're so many things. Miller chuckled again. Is riddles all you have, Mandy? You escaped Beta Team, Amanda said, far more bluntly. Disappeared, supposedly without a trace. No case files of you remain, no reports, as if there was no record of you at all. And when I ask, barely anyone knows you existed. Conduit 0005. Miller said nothing. Dan was the eye before me, Amanda said, looking at the ground. She needed to say all this for a long time, but she'd never had the freedom or respite that Miller, of all people, gave to her. Dan was the eye before the nihilist took him from me, at the behest of Valfreya. Miller looked away and asked, what would the nihilist want with Valfreya? Amanda looked over at Miller. She looked at her searchingly. Miller had a look on her bare face, a tired and depressed look, and yet there was acceptance there, the reassurance that she was in no way denying Amanda's assumptions. Miller had the semblance of a person who had been running from and ignoring the unrealistic truth her entire life. Amanda continued on. It makes sense that Nile Corp would want to be in league with Valfreya, she said. They want to die. Valfreya will remake them as slaves with no will and no concept of feeling. That's what they want, a life without pain and suffering, a feelingless life. Miller frowned. You have any proof of this, or... Amanda frowned deeper. They stole a girl, Han's daughter, a girl I knew well, she sighed. Every time I looked at her, I saw the wraiths of her past, the kings and queens of times long ago. She has the rare blood from old, forgotten lines, the diluted blood of gods. The nihilists lured us to her, thinking that Han had the same blood. I've never seen the same wraiths on him. The line must have passed from the girl's mother. Amanda wrung her hands and looked at Miller. We got her away, but the nihilists made use of some of her blood, from what I've gathered. Blood like that could strengthen a god. The old gods always did want sacrifices after all, and Valfreya's only been getting stronger lately. Amanda paused. Miller only nodded. It made sense to her. I spoke to a bitter old man with a pointed hat in Bradley, Amanda said, her head down. He said that someone of your description is Woden's champion, Woden's hand. Am I right in assuming that it's you? When she didn't get an answer, Amanda raised her head slowly. She saw Miller staring at her young child playing with his toys with a vacant, sad expression. There was water in her eyes, welling from the love and pain in her heart. It was as if Amanda was looking at a distorted reflection of herself. I am what I am, Miller said, looking back at Amanda. In that moment, Amanda saw the faded, fluttering black wings and feathers around Miller. There was a stink of iron and blood in the air. Ravens, Amanda whispered. Miller nodded. Ravens, she replied. After a moment of sullen silence, Elliot zoomed into the room with his haphazard aeroplane made of scraps from cereal box cardboard. He began to describe each part in an excitable manner, hopping from foot to foot and twirling around to mimic a plane in flight. He was clearly very proud of himself. It's really cool, Amanda commented. And you made this all by yourself? Mum helped me cut all the pieces. She got pictures from the internet, but I did all the sticking, Elliot told her, puffing out his chest and smiling like there was no tomorrow. I love planes, and I made this one just like my favorite one. It's a... Miller pulled him towards her and hugged him. I think that's enough, Elliot. She smiled at him. I think it's time for bed now, mister. Elliot pouted at his mother. But Mom, he moaned. You've got school tomorrow, Elliot, Miller said to him, shaking her head. You've finished making your plane, and you've showed it to our guest. Now it's time for bed. Elliot pressed his chin into his chest and said in a taut voice, Will you finish reading the story to me? If you change your clothes, brush your teeth, and climb into bed now, Miller said, I'll come up and read to you as soon as I've finished talking to Amanda. In his grumpiest tone, Elliot said, okay, and waddled out of the room with his aeroplane model, stomping softly up the steps into his bedroom. Amanda scoffed. He's adorable, she told Miller. Miller didn't respond to that. Instead, she said, I know why you're here, Amanda. Out with it then, Amanda replied. Come, save the world with me, Miller murmured. Let's save this world that's only given us trouble. Leave the one thing that you love behind and save everything else that you detest. With all due respect, Miller, but you are the ringleader of an underworld of pimps, thieves, and mercenaries, Amanda said, monotonous and condescending. I'm surprised that you have any time for Elliot at all. I barely do, Miller snapped. That doesn't mean I don't love him. Yes, I live a less than ordinary life, lead a less than virtuous company. I know I shouldn't want to, but it's all I can do now. You're telling me the thug life chose you, Amanda snorted. Miller fumed. You don't know me. I don't need to explain myself to you. I guess not, Amanda shrugged. But you do need to make a choice, now. We both know how ugly everything can get. We also know that we're the only ones here who have even the slightest chance of stopping her. Miller shook her head. She kept her voice down, even though it was clear that she didn't want to. It's not my responsibility. It's not yours either, she pointed out. It's my life, my body, and my mind. She looked at Amanda, boring into her eyes and whispering, We've both lost so much to this. Amanda nodded. And how much do you think we'll lose if we don't do this? They opened us up, Miller said to her. They picked at our nerves, sent electric shocks through our brains. They treated us like experiments. We had to drink every foul substance they gave us, eat whatever poison they put on our food, while they stood behind a glass window with their sterile jackets and wooden clipboards, taking notes on us. They took our piss, they took our shit, they took our blood, our mucus, the unborn children in our wombs. If you really are the new conduit, you bear the scars, same as me. Amanda's skin tingled with every word, like an unpleasant and unexpected chill. You don't need to tell me what Beta Team have done. Then why do you want to help them? Miller implored her. Valfreya won't hurt us. We have the blood of the gods. You really believe that? Amanda asked her. You really think killing a god is beneath Valfreya, much less their base-born daughters, you and I? Valfreya wants slaves. She wants us to fulfill our original purpose. What makes you think she's going to leave two of possibly the only humans who could destroy her with a free will? Amanda leaned back in her seat. Even if she does leave us be, is that a world you want your son to live in? A world of walking corpses with no minds, no identity? Miller stood up, her fist clenched. Don't bring Elliot into this. If you loved him, you'd involve him in all of your thoughts. The crack of Miller's fist against her face sent Amanda over the armrest of her seat. Her face pulsed with pain, and she spat blood onto the pretty rugs beneath her. I know I love my son, Miller said tersely. Amanda chuckled. Then you are going to let your... She turned her head to face Miller. Personal opinions about the world and what it's done to you get in the way of a normal life for him. What if I die, eh? Miller asked her. Who's going to watch out for him? He's only a little boy with a head full of dreams. Would you rather live and watch him suffer in a world full of demon slaves? Amanda asked her, rising to her feet. Miller didn't answer. Amanda wiped her bloodied mouth with the end of her sleeve. She ran her tongue across her burst lip. I think we're finished here, Amanda said. Go and read to your little boy. I'll wait for you to join me, but I won't wait long. Miller sneered at her, and her voice was sharp and icy when she responded, "Don't be expecting me." "Oh, I will be," Amanda said, walking off in the direction of the front door. "You'll know how to find me if you come looking." Miller didn't follow her to the door. She heard it swing open and then shut again. She didn't realize how heavy she was breathing, how angry and upset she was. She shook her head and stomped up the stairs, just like Elliot had when she'd sent him to bed. Miller paused outside his bedroom a moment and leaned her forehead against a wall. "He can't know I'm angry," she murmured to herself. "He can't know that something is wrong." She took a deep breath and opened the door. Miller stepped in, brushing toys on the floor out of the way with her feet. "Mum?" Elliot yawned when he turned his little head over to look at her. "Is Amanda gone?" Miller looked at his face and nodded. "Yes, she just left." "Is she going to be my aunt, Amanda?" he asked, with bright, glistening eyes. "She was very nice to me." Miller scoffed, shutting her eyes. "I don't know. I don't know her very well, Elliot." "I like her," Elliot said, smiling to himself. Miller smiled back. "You're a good boy," she whispered, holding back her tears. "Will you read a story to me now?" Elliot asked her. "No," Miller breathed. "No, I'm going to tell you a story instead. A story that I heard a long time ago." She watched her little boy settle into his blankets and look up at her expectantly. Miller couldn't help but smile again. She tucked the blankets around his tiny body and kissed his soft forehead. "A long time ago, thousands and thousands of years ago," Miller began, "a rock crashed into the world from outer space. People say it was the end of all the dinosaurs." "Or," Elliot said, "I like dinosaurs." Miller scoffed. "I know, but it happened," she continued. "When the rock crashed, it shattered into a million pieces, and where it stood was a company of people and their animals." "Aliens?" Elliot asked. "Yes, baby," Miller replied. "They'd escaped a much harder life to lie here in comfort and peace. They made marvelous things, and when people like you and me came about, they taught us everything they knew. The leader of these people, the one they call their father, was Woden. He was a kind but cruel man. But most of all, he was the wisest of all the company." Miller laughed. "He had a great big beard and a staff to lean upon, and he wore a pointed hat on his head." "He sounds like a wizard," Elliot commented. "A little bit," Miller nodded, remembering that Woden also had only one eye and a scar from rope burn around his neck, but she kept that information from little Elliot. His queen, the company's mother, was Freya. She was proud as a queen and taught all the people of the world how to grow plants, reap their harvest, and how to have children of their own. And for a long time the world lived in harmony." Miller paused. "What happened next?" Elliot asked, yawning again. "Everything fell apart," Miller murmured to herself. She patted Elliot's head and said, "Maybe we'll go over the rest of the story tomorrow." She kissed his forehead lightly and switched off the nightlight. "I love you, Elliot," she said, just about to leave his room. "I love you too, Mum," Elliot told her, curling his blankets around him and nuzzling his head into his pillow. Miller closed his bedroom door behind her and slid to the ground, holding her knees. She didn't know what to think. Why would she tell her son a story like that? That absurd story that old Dr. Talbot had told her years ago while she was lying on a surgical table. Woden was a curious man, he'd said. He wanted to know what would come of a child from a human mother, and naturally Freya wasn't thrilled with his experiments. These people from another world had brilliant skills and talents, and Freya intended to bend the minds of all humans so they could obey her will. Woden killed her for it. He loved the intelligence we possessed. He loved our spirit to create beautiful and terrible things. He loved us, and Freya sought to take the very thing that Woden loved about us. He tied Freya's soul to the earth, naming her Valfreya, so that it would always be fertile and bear fruit and plants so that mankind might prosper for many generations. He had thousands of offspring with humans before he faded away from this world, but every one of them was either blessed with one of his traits or cursed by Valfreya with deformities and defects of the mind. Talbot had smiled down at her as she lay there, like a cold slab of meat he intended to slice up. "That's why you're here. You have the touch of a god inside you." Miller cried silently but violently. Her head burrowed into her knees, her shoulders shaking. She could feel the touch of that cold scalpel even now. She would never forget it. She traced the lines of her scars on her scalp. She had never felt more like an object than she had in that lab. Even after the horrible things that had tormented her before that, it was like she was trapped in an endless loop of crazy, insane story, and she didn't know what she could do to stop it. She never asked for this. She'd never asked much in her life, but there was much she had taken. There was much she had taken, much she had decided. Miller was a self-made woman, and it rarely perturbed her if she was self-made on the wrong path. She could watch the world burn, and so long as Elliot could not smell the smoke, she was happy to let it burn. But if Valfreya was unleashed in all her power upon this world, if she was to take on a form and have command of all the natural power on the earth, Elliot would suffer that world, and Miller would be able to do nothing but watch. Sweet, innocent, dreaming Elliot. He'd learned the harsh realities of her stupidly vexed world if Valfreya wasn't put away as Woden had once put her away. And from the way Amanda told it, Miller was the only one she knew who could put Valfreya away. Miller wasn't a god, but she was the hand of Woden. Even the loony old man in Bradley had told her something like that. But how? How could she defeat a god? And that is chapter 15. Are we enjoying this so far? I am gonna have a brief look at the chat before we continue. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're enjoying the story. And so on and so forth. I'm just going to look at the chat before we move on to the next part. So British Pakistani Atheist, welcome. Dolly Rizki, welcome. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're having a good Monday. So British Pakistani Atheist says, my brother was doing his PGCE and his course was suspended. I think a lot of courses are being suspended. I know for a fact that my end of year assessment has been suspended because there just isn't, it's not viable, and my entire year would be marked based on all my other assignments. So it's good that I've been keeping on top of those. I also have one due in about 2 weeks, so I'm a little high strung. Let's say that. Do I do Discord? I do not. I don't know how to use Discord. I've never understood Discord. But I have been told many times that I should be using it, and we'll see in future if I will get on Discord. Junk Shop Library says, recently started playing around with OBS myself. It has potential, but it can be a nightmare. OBS I've had a few troubles with, but I've never tampered with it in terms of live streaming, so I'm still fiddling around with it to see how it works. And so far it seems to be running smoothly. I don't know if there is a limit with OBS or if I will have to stop the stream at some point. We'll see. But you know, we'll see what happens. Dragonoct is here, welcome. ASDF is here, welcome. Jake O'Connor has come in saying, looking good, Faye, thank you. Junk Shop Library says, strange and outlandish but warm. Yes, that's exactly what it feels like to smile for the first time in a while. Yes. Glad you're enjoying the story. Rory asks, Faye, my teeth are terrible. Do you know how I can strengthen without braces? Braces don't actually strengthen your teeth. I don't know. I don't know much about teeth, but I would consult your dentist. See the wraiths of her past, a fantastic phrase. You know what? I really miss being able to write this well, and I hope I can still write this well. So I think I will dive back into this after, you know, I finish reading it. Jewelry Bag, Assalamu alaikum, happy Ramadan all. Welcome, happy Ramadan. I hope things are going well for you and you aren't struggling too hard. Soraya, yo Faye, some serious reading today. Welcome, and yeah, we're having just a dramatic reading right now. Afroman says, yo Faye, where is the Haram Ramadan mukbang video? We did it on Saturday. You should go and check it out. It was a really, really good mukbang, and we covered some good topics. We are, we are doing some interesting stuff, and we will probably be staging another one in the last 10 days or so of Ramadan. We don't want to overdo it because we know that it's already a tough time. So yeah, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that was the last live stream I did. It should be in my uploads list, so go and check it out. Self-made on the wrong path, yes. Gideon, welcome. He says, I guess you're doing fine. You are looking better. Stay safe. Thank you. I'm doing okay. I'm just a little anxious and a little shaken up because I think that the isolation part of this lockdown is finally sort of settling in. I really miss all the people that I normally hang out with, and yeah. But we'll continue now that I've gotten through the live chat. Also, if you don't know what's going on, we are doing a live dramatic reading. So if you would like to stick around, grab a drink, grab some blankets, and just settle in to me reading some old stories, please feel free to. But please do remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you know people who want to join in, please do feel free to share. And settle in, and we're just having a chill Monday today. So chapter 16. There was a beast in Bradley Wood, a creature, a feral thing. Its skins were old and leathery, but pale like the moon on a dark night. It was humanoid. It had 4 limbs, 2 arms, 2 legs, and 4 extremities, 2 hands, 2 feet. But it was like no human you had ever witnessed before, as if half-made, half-formed, or touched by a demon. No grown man or woman had ever seen it, but the children who played in the wood talked about it often with excitement. "It's a she," they would say. "We seed it. She has long hair, white and silver like a grandma, but her face ain't old." "Is she pretty?" some would ask, while others would be dubious about the claim. After all, long hair meant nothing. A man could have long hair. "It's not a man," one child would say. "It's a girl. I seen her. She's skinny but strong, and she don't wear clothes, just rags. Maybe she did wear clothes a long time ago, but they ain't clothes no more." The other children would laugh and rebuke the child who claimed to see such a thing. Imagine, a naked woman in the wood. The child would get angry, his face flushing with red rage. "I seen her. It's not a joke. I seen her. She walks on 2 legs and she grunts at you if she sees you. She's a girl. Not a pretty one, not a nice one, but a girl who lives in the wood." One of the larger children would say to him, "Oi, everyone. Jim says he's seen the beast in the wood. And he says she's got tits." The child was incensed with embarrassment and with anger. "Shut up about her tits," she shouted, angry because it was besides the point, because the other children were making fun of him, and because he wasn't entirely sure what tits were. "She fights with the lady," he said. The other children went silent. Only the older child scoffed. "What lady?" The older child wasn't from Bradley. He didn't know what the Bradley Wood was, and he didn't know what the other children had heard about the Lady of Bradley Wood, or what some of them had seen. There's so many typos in this chapter. Oh my god. "The lady who turns them into aliens," the little girl said. "My mum and I saw her when our dog ran into the wood." "What are you talking about?" the older child laughed. "Turns what into aliens?" "People," said another child. "People who just go in there at night. The lady touches them with her finger and they turn completely white," said another. "She loves us, she hates us, she'd squeeze us if she could," said another. "How haven't you heard of the Lady of Bradley Wood?" they all asked together. The older child huffed. If that really happened, then why haven't we seen it in the papers?" The little girl shook her head. "They disappear, the aliens. There's men that go into the wood at the crack of dawn every day, and they always come out and take something. I heard my mum nattering to my dad about it, but they haven't found anything to take for a while, not for about 2 months," said the child who first spoke, "because the beast is fighting the lady. I seen her, and she seen me, and she just grunted and let me go. I'm here, and I'm whole to tell you." The older child rolled his eyes. "Rubbish," he muttered. "It's all rubbish." But there was a beast in Bradley Wood, and all the young children that lived around it would stay up until the late hours of the evening every night, just before the first streak of dawn broke the night, and would listen. They would listen to the beast howl, and it would hurt their ears. So we're building some excitement. That was chapter 16, and we are moving on to the last and final chapter. So what are your thoughts about that? Kind but cruel, what does that mean? I'm not entirely sure, but fathers are often described as kind but cruel. So I kind of took a page out of that. Gideon A says, I guess, okay, yeah, I've read that one. Junk Shop Library says, there was a beast in Bradley Wood. I would absolutely continue reading after that line. Absolutely hooked. Well, we're on the final chapter. So, yeah. But I do want to finish this story, and if you have suggestions for how the story should end, feel free to let me know and leave your thoughts in the comments or in the live chat. But we're going to move on to the last chapter that I wrote for this, and the last chapter that you will hear me read before finishing this story. So yeah, we're going to swiftly move on, and we'll end the stream after that. 17. In the beginning there was darkness, and they said, let there be light, and there was light. Light always came in the form of streams, yellow and blinding, through tiny green canopies above. They always had. She didn't know where else it would come from. Light was warm and light was cold. Light would comfort and light would burn. Light had given sight and light took sight. This was her reality. There was no other. Not from the day that she came into existence, and not until the day that history left her in the dust of time. Light, eternal. And there was birdsong, the twitter of small birds and the cawing of black ones, the ones that waited, patient as saints. She would find them by her feet, she would find them hopping through her hair, she would find them pecking at her skin, prodding her, inspecting her flesh for the signs of a soul. Her eyes would open, the light would fill her, and she would scatter like flies, and they would scatter like flies from a dung heap. She would breathe a breath so true, the lungs would fill to capacity before deflating and flattening. She would feel her face, hold her arms, and stretch her legs. She would heal. She would water and feed her body, and she would wait. It was the same every day. She couldn't remember a life before this, waking, healing, fighting, dying, and waking again. Was this the afterlife? Had she gone home? Was this hell? She didn't know she was an animal. She had no wants, had no ideas. She just did the same things over and over. She fought and survived and endured. When the other came, there was nothing else to do. The other always rose at sunset, under a bleeding sky reeling in the black night. The other was pale, beautiful, and terrible, and the other enveloped her like a mother envelops her babe, and then constricted her like a snake on its prey. No wind, no words, no way for her but to scream. Scream into the night as she was constricted again and again. When the dawn broke the night once more, the other would tire and relent and rest, and so too would she, just to wake again and heal. She didn't know how this would end, who would win. She knew that someone would, but she could never tell who. She sometimes imagined that there were others like her, but she didn't know any more. In her memory there were two faces that had desperately clung. One face that had no nose, and the second that had two cold blue eyes. She didn't know who they were, she couldn't remember, but they would disturb her dreams and her waking hours, especially the second one. But they were fading. She didn't know if it was a good thing. She didn't know if it was a bad thing. She knew it would put water in her eyes to think that they would leave, but she didn't know what the water meant or why it was there, why it hurt, or why she would lose her strength when the water came upon her. Have you forgotten who you are yet? The other would say to her, and she would always reply no. She didn't know how to reply otherwise. The other said the same, as she rose at dusk. Well, have you forgotten? The other said. No, was her response. She prepared for the first attack, but the other gave pause. I admire your resilience, but there's nothing left of you, the other said. You're no better than a beast that eats where it defecates. No, was all she said. No, that's all you can say, the other laughed. One word to erase you and you'll be mine. She breathed. She didn't know what this was. Are you ready to scream one last time? The other asked her. She said nothing for a moment and began saying something. It wasn't clear. She tried again. Mine. The other just laughed, and then lunged. She became a column, a spear of pure white light, and leapt into her throat. She screamed. Her voice tore away from her, and other animals around her crawled out of their burrows and homes and started to howl. Her eyes rolled back so that only the whites showed, and her body shook violently. A vicious convulsing overcame her, and she threw the beam back out of her, rejecting the other. Stubborn girl, the other panted, sprawled over the floor. Mine, she swallowed. My name, Amanda Cross. The other grimaced, her perfect face wrinkling into an ugly frown. Amanda laughed. God, no. God will bow to mine name. Amanda gestured to her chest. The other bellowed, shaking the foundation of every tree near her, and clawed Amanda's neck. Amanda just laughed. Valfreya. Your name, Valfreya. She was thrown away, a rag doll tossed into the air before she landed in a pile. She sat upright, smiling. Valfreya will bow to Amanda Cross. And that's the end. That's all I wrote. That's where it finishes. It gets like super intense and then it just ends. That's all I have in terms of what I've written. So let me know what you think. You can probably tell which two chapters I wrote later as compared to the other chapters, which were hulkingly long and filled with description. But let me know what you thought, and let me know what to do with the rest of it. I see Junk Shop has commented by saying, water and feed her body. It does sometimes feel that mechanical in third person, doesn't it? Well, at this point, I wanted to create this illusion of her losing herself and losing her memory and just having like the sort of animal instincts left. I that's what I've got. And that's why I wanted to write that chapter like that. And I also wanted to make them shorter because she no longer has that depth of being able to describe everything in the way that I was before. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed it and I hope you like listening to it. And I don't know how to end it because I don't know who to kill off or if I should kill anyone off or if I should kill everyone off. Like I just don't know. It would be really, really cool for me to do that, but also I don't know how. Shreya Sharma, welcome. You have my support, girl. Love you. I came to know you're from Bangladesh. I'm from Assam, India. Assam shares border with Bangladesh. Lots of love and stay safe. I wouldn't move. I wouldn't go to any part of South Asia at the moment because of the political climate, and also because of the coronavirus. But hopefully one day I can go back to Bangladesh, India, just to see it. It's been a long time since I've been there. Junk Shop says, shit, I fucking hate you. What a cliffhanger. It really is a cliffhanger, but I was in such two minds about what I wanted to do with the ending, and I just don't know. I just don't know. I think there's a part of me that wants to go in several different directions, and it's just, I can't decide. And I would love to make it a choose your own adventure. Like if this was a video game, I could write all the endings and then you could pick your ending, But it's not a video game, and if you know any video game creators, connect them to me so that I can make this into a video game, because I actually really like this story. And I think the next dramatic like live reading that I do will probably be a whole different story. I have a few ideas for some cringy stuff. I have some ideas for some serious stuff. So yeah, let me know what you what you think of the whole story from beginning to end. What you think I should do with the ending, if you think there should be an ending, or if you think that cliffhanger is a good one to end on. And yeah, I hope you've had a good time. I don't know how long. Oh, we've been streaming for 44 minutes. If you have any like final questions or comments, let me know, or I will end the stream. I'm very tired and anxious, so I don't really want to do anything today. So yeah, I might just end the stream here, but let me know. I'm just checking Twitter. Thank you, Junk Shop, for sharing the live stream, even though you've very kindly expressed that you've hated that I've left this on a cliffhanger. But anyway, I'm going to sign off. Thank you guys for joining me. Please do remember to like, share, subscribe if you're new here. I do tend to put out, throughout the lockdown, I've been putting out content every single day. Some of it's funny, some of it's serious, mostly funny and nonsense content, but we will have some more, interesting stuff to come. I'm going to try and do more live streams this week, because it's going to be a little bit of a tough week for me, because I can feel myself spiraling into a depressed little spiral. So I'm going to try and keep, as positive as I can, and try and get, what I need the most. So thank you for joining me. Junk Shop, I'm going to end on this, says, I know I missed some streams in the middle, but I've absolutely loved every bit of the story that I managed to catch. I'm really, really glad that you've enjoyed it thoroughly, and that you've, tried to join as many streams as possible. It's actually quite encouraging to me, as someone who's like trying to find their writer's voice again. So thank you for that. I am falling off my beanbag. I'm gonna go, but thank you for joining me, and I hope you will join me tomorrow for whatever I plan for tomorrow. So thank you, and goodbye.